Stormy West Coast Rap, man, and welcome to my podcast, You Bitch. So you want to start recording the podcast, huh? Yeah, that. But what platform are you going to use? So there are a lot of free platforms out there, but those free platforms limit you in what you can do to take your podcast to the next level, giving you that professional quality sound. But if I may give you a little bit of advice, I use Riverside.fm. Now, a lot of top social media influencers and CEOs use Riverside.fm because it allows you to record audio and video clips in high-def 4K resolution. Go to the show notes and click on the link to start your free trial. And once that trial is up, then you just select the subscription package that works best for you. You got to invest in yourself and do it with the best Riverside.fm. YeahDat. So now you got your podcast recorded, but who's going to host your podcast? Here goes another tip. Use Captivate.fm. Captivate.fm gives you the freedom and flexibility to make podcasting yours. Create and distribute unlimited podcasts, get advanced analytics, monetize, and promote in one simple, easy-to-use dashboard. Created by podcasters for podcasters with a dashboard that makes running and promoting your show a complete breeze. It's the only podcast host you need with everything you need to share your podcast with the world. Set up your podcast or migrate in seconds. There's no contracts, commitments, and every feature is included from day one with no need to upgrade ever. Reach audiences all over the world with easy, single-click submission to leading directories, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Pods, Amazon, as well as popular listening apps like Overcast, Castro, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, whatever. So, once you get that podcast recorded, upload it, use Captivate.fm to host your podcast and distribute your podcast to all the podcast platforms out there. Click the link in the show notes to start your free trial and then pick what works for you. It's Captivate.fm. YeahDat. The thoughts, views, and opinions you may hear on this show are just that. My thoughts, my views, my opinions, as well as my guests. So if you don't like them, disagree with them, or whatever the case may be, well, there's a simple solution to all that, and that's just stop listening. However, if you care to partake in the conversation, sit back, turn it up, and enjoy the show. YeahDat. Well, welcome back to another episode of the YeahDat podcast, hosted by yours truly, West Coast Roberto. How y'all doing out there? I want to thank you all for listening, tuning in, whether you're in your car, on the way to work, on the way to school, on the way to the grocery store, at your auntie's house, or if you're just at home listening, in your office, if you're on a train, if you're traveling, or if you're at the gym doing cardio, whatever the case may be. Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of the YeahDat podcast, hosted by yours truly, West Coast Rob. And first I want to say, bear with me, y'all, if my formatting of the show is, kind of changing with each episode. I'm trying a few things out, seeing what I like, but that's what you got to do in order for you to learn and perfect your craft. You gotta try things out. Try new things, try different settings, formats, etc. But we are on episode 25. Oh yeah, we are rolling. I know for some it's like some experienced podcasters, y'all like 25. Okay, that's fine. Barely, whatever, woo woo. But as for me, I don't give a fuck. 25 is a lot, man. Starting the podcast, never thought I was going to get to this point, but we are at that 25 episode mark, man. It's a milestone right now. But episode 25, if you haven't listened to the last episode 24, I expressed my opinions in regards to people, the great species that we are, and how we're extraordinary and amazing, and how we can be stupid and dumb at the same time. And I also covered and gave my opinion on the Joe Rogan situation. Excuse me. And my thoughts and beliefs on Joe Rogan and that whole, craziness, don't condone the N words and all that stuff, condone what he's trying to do in regards to, have people put their messages out and, whatever that case may be, don't agree with the fucking, I know he's a comedian, but don't agree with the stupid comments of like Planet of the Apes and all that bullshit. It's just whatever. But if you want to hear my opinion, tune in to episode 24. You should also check out episode 23 if you haven't. That had my man Vernon Henderson on there, actor, comedian, writer, and we went over a gang of stuff, from what it's like writing, like what are the steps in regards to writing a script, what do you do submitting, what it's like being a stand-up comedian, what it's like being on that stage, how to go about starting an acting career if that's what you're aspiring to be, etc., etc. Man, two great episodes, so check them out. 23, 24, and 25, which is today. This one you're listening to right now. It's lover season for those of us, or those of you who care out there. Those of you in relationships, it's that time of the year where it's like, oh, that day is approaching where people glorify love and all that. First off, let me say you should be glorifying your love every day, not only for people or the person you are in a relationship with, but the love of yourself. You should love yourself. That should be a very, very important piece to your life, is, self-love, self-worth, and all that stuff. But, as you get older, like me, Valentine's Day and this little time of the year is kind of like, all right, okay. It's more of a youngsters, a young folks day or whatever. Because I show my love every day to the people I love, my wife, my daughters. And I don't just buy flowers on this day. I do it on a regular day, go out, I'm gonna grab my wife some flowers, so when she comes home she can walk in, and she's like, oh, why'd you get these? Just because, but that's the type of stuff I do. Free game for y'all out there. Do shit like that on regular days, not just the glorified day. And not every lady likes chocolates and bears. Maybe if you're in high school, middle school, a young adult, maybe. If they're still into that shit, cool. But don't be typical, man. Do your own thing, man. Be unique. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, since it's the lovers' time of the year, I figured my guest today, or the episode today, I'd have something along the lines of couples and love and whatever. So today's guest I have is Mr. Sam Tielemans, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he specializes in pornographic addiction and couples healing. Yeah. I was introduced to Mr. Tielemans through another podcast I was listening to that he was a guest on, and I thought that his area of expertise was unique. I've never heard of anybody specializing in pornographic addiction. So, of course I gave the episode a listen, and as I go over it during the episode, as you'll find out once you listen or view, if you're watching this on YouTube /West Coast Rob, I just go over, when I was listening to the episode of him on the other show, I was just, I had a bunch of questions I wanted to ask him myself. So, it's very interesting. And we learn about Sam and how he got introduced into that area of expertise. He gives tips in regards to, little techniques. About helping you grow as a couple, and et cetera, so on and so forth. So tune into the episode. It's very, very interesting. I guarantee you'll be intrigued. I go over some experiences that I've had with individuals in regards to porn and all that stuff. But tune in. Episode 25 with Mr. Sam Tielemans, and I hope you enjoy it. I did, and I'll catch you on the back end. YeahDat. All right, welcome back to another episode of the YeahDat podcast hosted by yours truly, West Coast Rob. And I'm really looking forward to the guest we have today. I ran up on the guest or was introduced to the guest through another podcast that he was guesting on and or appearing on. And the topics that they were talking about, I just found very interesting. And as I was listening to the podcast that you were featured on, I had my questions were just popping up like, oh, I want to ask him this. I want to ask him this. So I had to reach out and get Mr. Tielemans on my podcast. So, Sam, if you would, please introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers out there.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All
Yeah,
right.
my name is Sam Tielemans, like you said. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I work with couples and individuals, specifically those who are struggling with like addiction or infidelity or pornography use. And it affects the relationship, it affects the person who's struggling with it. And so, yeah, I'm on a mission to help people find freedom and really restore their relationships because I know it affects so many people out there.
Nice, nice. And before we dive in, like straight into it, I like to get to know the person I'm talking
Sure.
to first. So a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, how old you are, etc.
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, I'm from Las Vegas.
Okay.
And I've been here my whole life. And I'm 36 years old. I've got a couple of kiddos. I got a 6-year old and a 2-year old.
All right.
And yeah, I've been in Vegas. I'll be here for the rest of my life. I love it here.
Okay, there you go. Well, we're the same age then. 36. You turning 37
Oh,
this
nice.
year?
37 this year. Yep.
Hey, all right. 1985 babies. That's what I'm talking
That's
about.
right.
All right. All right. So how was so what was your upbringing like? Just the common everyday normal upbringing or
So yeah, I'm so growing up here in Vegas, I don't know if you've ever been here or
I
not, but
have.
sometimes
I
when
love
people
Vegas.
oh, you have it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the strip is the center of everything, but on the outskirts, that's
Mhm.
just like regular life. So I never,
Right.
growing up here, you never really go to the strip very often. Well,
Yeah.
I don't anyways.
Yeah.
It's not the same as somebody who's coming into town. That's all they want to do. But so for me,
Yeah.
I was kind of on the outskirts a little bit and grew up in a home where we were religious. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
And so has a huge influence on my life, just my belief in God. And um, went to high school here, skateboarded, played basketball.
Nice.
So yeah, just I guess it's kind of a standard childhood for many people.
Okay, right on. Right on. So what drove you to your profession now? Like what was there anything that was just like, you know what, this is what I want to do? What drove you into your path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always liked talking with people. So whenever friends had questions or concerns, they'd kind of find their way to having conversations with me,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed it. I gave the best advice that I could at the time without having any tools or training, and just kind of ideas and thoughts. And a couple of people asked me, "Have you ever considered being a counselor?" And I thought, no. Like I was really interested in, like I said, I grew up skateboarding,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be like a skateboard filmer. That
Yeah.
was my
Okay.
dream when I
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
16. Like I want to be a filmer. And so I was doing videography for a while. I was filming weddings for a while, and then I, started to listen to people saying, "Why don't you check this out?" So I started to take some classes at school,
Mhm.
and just I absolutely loved learning more about how the mind works and how emotion influences how we think and decide, and the decisions that we make as far as behaviors. And when people get stuck, there's reasons why. So I just got fascinated with how the mind works, and then ever since then I've just been studying and learning, and I'm obsessed with finding better ways to help people. And so as far as working with people struggling with addiction, with pornography specifically, I remember being in grad school having a conversation with a friend, and because I don't personally have this struggle,
Mhm.
but when he was sharing with me that he was in grad school in part to become a therapist so he could overcome his addiction. He said he did everything under the sun. He went to groups, he went to counseling, he did 12-step work, he tried meditation. Like he did everything he could possibly think of, and he could not figure out how to overcome it.
Mhm.
And so I remember sitting on the couch there listening to him and thinking, like, I'm sure I'm going to see this a lot, not only in the church that I go to, but like so many people struggle with this, just especially because like it's so accessible.
Of
I
course.
just remember having the thought, I should learn how to treat this because I'm sure I'm going to see it a lot.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like literally millions of people struggle with some unwanted behavior, some
Mhm.
addictive type of behavior. And so figuring out the core of why, giving people the tools that they need to really overcome it, it's been such a cool journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, my wife, she has a master's in adolescent mental health. So like mental health
Great.
is a big thing in my household. So it's something that I've learned to love. And have been intrigued in learning more about. So when I heard about you and your specialty, I just thought it was like, I've never heard of anybody specializing in that per se of pornography or addiction to pornography. So I thought it was real cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of people. I think that's one of the problems is because there aren't like a ton of people who specialize in this specifically and really niche
Hmm.
down in it. So the traditional advice and ideas, like it doesn't work,
Hmm.
and so people get discouraged when they go to a counselor and who doesn't. They might be good at other areas, but if they don't know the intricacies of addiction and how to overcome it, then they just leave discouraged and think like, I've met with people who are like, "You're my fourth therapist, so like I hope this works." And
Yeah.
so it's if you don't really specialize in it, there's so many little nuances that you just miss.
Right. Okay. So according to the Florida House of Treatment, there are 4 levels that contribute to addiction, and it's genetics, socioeconomic status, environmental influence, and like a pre-existing condition. Do you agree that those are the like main 4, or are there more that contribute to addiction?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors for sure. And I know there is this never-ending debate between nature and nurture.
Right.
Like a couple of those, like you said, genetics or environmental factors.
Hmm.
I very, very much lean more heavily on the nurture side of things. And the reason why is because at the core, one of the most important things to understand is that when somebody struggles with addiction, whether it's with pornography, whether it's with alcohol or food or Facebook or like literally any behavioral or substance addiction, it's almost always a result of them trying to cope with some like underlying negative emotion.
Hmm.
And so if somebody is feeling overwhelmed or stressed or unworthy or inadequate or lonely, whatever this uncomfortable emotion is, when they find something that they turn to, whether it's a substance or a behavior that relieves that pain or helps them get out of that pain, then it's like the reward center in the brain emits dopamine and these feel good endorphins.
Right.
So it feels good. And so when they go back to, their real life or reality, or just when the endorphins fade, they feel bad again. And so then they learn, well, I'll go to this thing, substance or behavior, and I feel better. And then, like, the more you kind of loop in that pattern, the more it becomes an addiction. So I think while I think there can be a genetic component to it. Some people are
Yeah.
more kind of predisposed. I think much more influential is the environmental factors and that habit or pattern that's created as they're trying to just get away from pain.
I agree. Especially nowadays with it's just so accessible. Like sex, and it's you
Everywhere.
see it on TV and ads
Yep.
and everything. So the environmental factor is like a big component, I believe. Um
Yep. I agree.
so on your website, you mentioned the DPAR method in regards to proving success into addiction. Can you um explain what the DPAR method is?
Yep. So I had a guest on who that was kind of his approach, was to be able to identify what's going on.
Mhm.
There's a handful of different steps, and it's kind of all around the idea that you want to identify specifically what you're trying to get away from,
Mhm.
what negative emotion, what limiting belief do you have about yourself, be able to acknowledge that, to then resist or work with the triggers to ultimately diffuse them so you can find that freedom. And so I think that's one of the most important things for people to understand, is that unless, like, identifying what the triggers are and the root cause of what you're trying to get away from, if people don't do that, they're going to try all sorts of methods that don't work. They'll try willpower, they'll try filters on their phone, they'll try I remember hearing somebody recommend putting a rubber band on your wrist, and every time you have a sexual thought, you like snap the rubber
Oh
band.
wow.
And I think that those are like surface level measures that don't address why there are these triggers for you.
Right.
And so I think it's critical for people to understand what specifically is driving their decisions to turn to pornography or sex or infidelity or, again, any other behavioral addiction. Like, what's the core reason that they're trying to get away from? Like, what are they escaping?
Right.
And once they can get clear about that, then they can identify a path forward. So, for instance, if somebody feels lonely or disconnected and they just kind of feel like they don't fit in, the need is acceptance, it's connection, it's to feel like they do have a place. And so the antidote isn't to just zone out and drink or drug or watch porn. It's you need to find a community and connect with actual people
Mm-hmm.
to fill that need that you have. So yeah, I think that method is all about identifying the reason why people are struggling and then taking the steps necessary to resolve it.
Okay. I agree with that because, so for example, I'm in the military and I've been in 18 years. When I first joined, the younger guys just joined. They kind of gravitate to each other, want to hang out. And there's
Sure.
one individual in particular, and you can tell like by meeting him and talking to him, he was quite sheltered and
Mm-hmm.
never had a girlfriend, never had a girlfriend or anything like that. So every time he would be introduced to a woman he's working with, or if the woman's starting to converse with him more often, he automatically thought the woman liked him or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So he ended up getting an apartment. I would go to his apartment, and I remember going into the bathroom one day, and there was porn everywhere. Everywhere. There was a portable DVD player sitting on top of the toilet. If you open the cabinets up under the sink, DVDs of porn everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Everywhere. And he was like, yeah, you have it on in the shower. And then this. And to me, it's like, okay, well, I don't know, just the thought of, we were talking about in environmental influence and pre-existing conditions. It's the fact that, was he sheltered and is now in this big world of various cultures and women and stuff like that? You think that contributed to like his addiction into pornography or whatnot,
Yeah, it's a
if it
good
was?
question. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think there's a natural curiosity that people have. Like
Hmm.
most of the people that I work with, they'll tell me that they were initially exposed to pornography when they were like, so the average age of exposure they say is between 9 and 11.
Oh, okay.
And so sometimes people, like, I was working with somebody just last week. He said the first time he saw porn was like going through some construction site when
Hmm.
when he was like a 10-year-old kid and found this little magazine.
Yeah.
And he was so curious about it, and he didn't really feel like he could talk to his parents about it, so he kept it all to himself. And a part of him was curious and excited. The other part of him started to feel like, nah, this is this wrong? I don't know what this is.
Right.
A 10-year-old's brain is not wired to be exposed to the types of images that are available today.
Yeah.
It's like kids cannot process that. So maybe with the person that you're referring to, yeah, I think I'm not sure if he maybe didn't have anybody he can talk to and process that stuff with him, but
Hmm.
there is a natural curiosity, and does pull people in, because that's an important part of who we are as people. We're sexual beings,
Yeah.
so we want to honor that. But doing it in this type of a way, for so many people, is destructive, and they find that it just really does take away self-esteem. It takes away. It can increase depression and anxiety and guilt and
Hmm.
sadness. For other people, they don't have a problem with it. There's no like, again, there's two different camps. One camp says it's a moral issue and you shouldn't do it because it's wrong and bad. The other camp says it's not a moral issue and adults can do whatever they want. Whatever camp you're in, there is research that talks about the effect that it has on somebody. The mind, when you're exposed to certain images, it shapes how your mind, like for instance, many people after they watch pornography, they view women more as objects than they do as people, just
Right.
because on the screen, that's what you're, the content that you're consuming inevitably influences how you think and feel and see
Right.
things. And so yeah, with this person in the military, yeah, I think it's like there's a natural curiosity there, but if somebody doesn't teach them and help them understand the effect that it has and the influence that it can have on them, the kids will take that, and they'll keep going back to it over and over again, and it really does develop into a habit.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So so I'm a fan of your ever since I discovered you. I've been listening to your
Thank
podcast.
you.
Big fan of
Thank
the
you.
podcast. Favorite episode thus far is the how to diffuse an argument before it even starts. So I actually listened to an episode. I've been going through all of them. I'm listening to all of them. However, what it kind of like, so I want to ask a question, as well as like, it kind of irks me how it's like, it seems like the male is always portrayed as the one with the addiction, or the one addicted to pornography, and then it's how to cope with the lady. My question is, Have you ever had a client or clients where the role was opposite, where it was the woman vice the male?
So, yeah, on the podcast, for simplicity's sake, I always refer to the husband who's struggling and the wife who needs to have her trust rebuilt.
Hmm.
But it definitely does occur where the roles are reversed,
Hmm.
where the woman struggles with addiction, the husband doesn't, and he feels a sense of betrayal.
Right.
Uh, the majority of people who do struggle, it's more men.
Of
So
course. Of
just again, for
course.
simplicity's sake,
No.
I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
refer to it that way.
Yeah.
But only like I think maybe only one time have I had a couple where the wife struggled and the husband did not.
Hmm.
Most people that reach out to me, it's the husband struggling. So again, just for simplicity's sake, I kind of just refer to it that way. But all the tools and all that stuff works the same, right? The
Okay.
strategies
Yeah.
to heal and overcome it, all the same. But yeah, more men for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's understandable. I just wanted to ask the question, and
Yeah, it's a
and,
good question.
and I was going to ask if the tools were different. What about so it's 2022 and people are their sexualities are different nowadays. Have you ever dealt with same sex relationships, and how is the tools the same for that type vice a traditional heterosexual couple?
Yeah, great question. Yep. So I have worked with same sex couples before, and the tools are literally the exact same, which is
Okay.
good because the way that I think about it is as different as we all are as people, we're all ultimately made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
We have the same core needs, we have the same core longings, we have the same insecurities. They can be expressed in different ways, but yeah, at the core, we're the same in terms of the needs that we have, though there are lots of differences as human beings. Again, it's like we're made of the same stuff.
Right.
So the tools are the same, which is good, I think, for people to not feel like they have to learn, a bunch of different ways to do this. And as unique as people are, there's a process and a path that helps people to get freedom by ultimately, again, addressing the reason why they're struggling in the first place.
Right. So, and on a podcast you were on, you mentioned that the main age range of the clients who are addicted to pornography is, I believe you said 40 is like the start, around 40.
Most of the people I work with, yeah, are 40 and above,
Okay.
roughly.
So that's predominantly your age demographic of your clients.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people struggle for literally like years and years and
Hmm.
try to do it on their own. And then finally, it's like they reach this breaking point where they've been struggling for like 15 years. They're like, I can't figure this out. I can't do this by
Right.
myself. So then they reach out. So they become addicted earlier than 40, but they, for whatever reason, it's difficult to reach out, which I understand. It's
Right.
hard. It feels a lot of people have a lot of shame and embarrassment, but once they do, then they can actually deal with it and get it out of their lives. But yeah, most people struggle on their own for a long, long time.
What are some like telltale signs of a person who's addicted to pornography but may not know that they're addicted to pornography?
So some of the indicators, actually, let me start with saying it's all in a spectrum.
Hmm.
So I kind of think about it like there's no use, like the absence of it, then use, misuse, abuse, dependence, addiction.
Hmm.
So it can range from any degree that somebody struggles with, and like full blown addiction. That's when people are like obsessively and compulsively seeking it and literally cannot stop. They spend hours and hours a day searching for material, thinking about stuff, like in the addiction cycle for most of the day, most of the time. It affects their finances, it affects their spirituality, it affects their self esteem, their relationships, jobs, focus, school, concentration. Like it has a significant effect in somebody's life.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of people that I work with are not at the far end, this extreme uh, on the continuum of addiction,
Hmm.
somewhere in between. Like,
Okay.
it's something, it's like this, it's either like this bad habit they want out of their life, or it's like further on where they're seeking prostitutes and multiple times a week. It all definitely ranges.
Right.
And so I think one indicator, or one thing that I would suggest that people consider is this something that's affecting your life or some area of your life in a negative way? Whether it's relationships, whether it's focus and concentration or self-esteem, or any aspect of your life, is this something that's negatively affecting it? And if so, it's worth taking a look at and trying to figure out, okay, well, why do I keep going back to this? even though I see it's affecting me negatively in these areas, what's driving this? What's going on? It doesn't mean like you're quote unquote somebody who's like an addict or addicted,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's on some spectrum of this is not really working for me yet, I keep going back to it, every so often. That's where I think it's worth examining. Okay, what's driving that? What's causing that?
Okay. Have you ever encountered um, any clients where the husband is the one into pornography and then introduces the wife and they're both like addicted? Have you ever encountered
Um, Usually people come in because the wife is so negatively affected by the husband's behavior.
that? Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it where he includes her and then she becomes addicted as well. Usually, when the wife finds out, she's completely devastated
Mm-hmm.
and she's shocked by what she's discovering, and it really like redefines how she sees him.
Right.
She thinks to herself, like, he's been doing this for how long? Do I even know this person? And then they start to think about these memories of, well, we were on vacation. Was he looking at things at that point? Or what was happening at this point of, our relationship? I thought
Right.
we were in a good place, but now I'm discovering all this stuff was going on. So usually they're really heartbroken by it because they take it. It's such a sensitive and personal thing. And so I've never seen it where both people, I've worked with couples where both people view it,
Yeah.
but it's not because the one introduced it to the other. Sometimes people come in for different reasons. They might view pornography, but be having struggles with communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they say, well, no, we're fine here. We're both, in agreement. We both are on the same page with pornography use and we're good with it. Then we just focus on whatever it is that they're coming in for.
Right. Which the communication reminds me of the podcast episode that you had, which was the diffusing an argument, because it really touched bases with me in regards
Mm-hmm.
to the example you used where the wife was talking to the husband and he got up and went to the pantry to grab something and the wife was like, what are you doing? It
Uh-huh.
resonated with me because sometimes my wife does it where she doesn't even realize it. And it's like I'm talking to her and then she'll just go to my daughter like, hey, da, 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 and I was like, I'm talking
Uh-huh.
to you. I'm talking to you. So it really resonates with me. Like some of the stuff you put out in your podcast, I really enjoy it. So I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. I want to let you know that.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so many couples. I know I kind of niche down and talk about how addiction influences the relationship, but
Yeah.
there are so many dynamics that we all have
Yeah.
as, married or dating relationships, that once you understand why people get into arguments and why people start to feel disconnected and why we have the same fights over and over again, and once you identify those things and can break those down, then like you can truly create a different relationship. Whether or not pornography is affecting it negatively,
Yeah.
relationships can change again once you get some tools to really be able to communicate differently, so you don't keep getting into the same fights.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in regards to just anything that you're talking about, in regards to like couples, is just it's just great gems to use, regardless if you're in a bad relationship or your relationship is great. It's just all the stuff you're putting out is just great for any couple out there. So I highly
Thank
recommend
you
it.
very much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. It's
yeah,
I've really enjoyed doing the podcast. It's fun. But again, like even working with people, just seeing the changes, because on a podcast it's hard, right? Because
yeah,
you don't see there's no like dialogue where I can say something and they're like, oh, that makes sense, and they can do
yeah,
it differently, and then you can see the shifts. Podcast, I'm just like looking at my microphone,
yeah.
so I don't really know the effect that it's having until I get an email or like you're saying right now, listening to
Right.
it, and it's helpful. So yeah, it's been great. I love doing it.
So when for your clients, do people like is your main clientele addicted to pornography, or is it just couples healing in general?
So we have two different, so we get probably like 150 calls a month, and anybody who's not struggling with addiction, I've got a team who I usually just kind of refer the clients to.
Okay.
The people who I work with directly, it is mostly coming from my podcast. If they hear and go into my material and say like, this is really helpful, I want to get another layer of help, then that's when they'll reach out to me. So
Okay.
me personally, I'll work with mostly addiction stuff. I'll still work with marriage stuff as well, but a lot of those people, they'll go to somebody who's on my team.
Okay. I didn't know. Man, you're so it sounds like business is booming for you.
It's been super busy, which yeah, we'd love to be able to help, but I know like there's a lot of people having a hard time. The pandemic was tough, for a lot of people just
Right.
feeling cooped up, and you know, if there's conflict in the relationship, it's hard to avoid it, because
Hmm.
you're in the same place
Of
now.
course.
So yeah, people have, I know people are having a hard time, so we're lucky to be in a place to help.
Right on. How long have you been doing this, Sam?
I graduated in 2013, so 9 years now.
Okay. Right on. What is I without sharing, client, counselor, privacy, what is like one of the craziest stories or something that
Crazy story.
experiences that you've heard that's just kind of when you think about it,
Uh,
it's like, what? Wow. Without,
think. Yeah. Let me think. I remember working with somebody one time. He wasn't. He was. So I used to run groups.
mhm.
My whole my mentality has changed over the years in terms of what I see most effective. But in the past, I used to run groups. Uh, I haven't done a group in a while. But I remember in the group, the guy who came in was struggling and he was addicted to sex, and he
Mhm.
said that he had probably slept with like 200 women. This was
Wow.
like 2014.
Okay.
So I don't know where he is now. I hope he's in a good spot now. But
Hopefully.
like hundreds of women, and he had this little game where he wanted to see how few words he could say to somebody before he could get them to have sex with him.
Mhm.
So he'd go to the mall. I remember this example sticking out of my mind. He'd go to the mall. This is one of the times where he's like, yeah, that like it took like 7 words or like 2 sentences or something. He had this
Yeah.
like little lingerie with him, and he went up to a girl and he said, "You'd look good in this. Let's go," or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Okay." And then they went off,
Wow.
and yeah, like so he was like he had this whole like spiel and had this whole process of trying to get women. And I remember just listening to his story, thinking like, man, this guy's he's in it pretty far.
Right.
And it was just yeah, it was like talking to friends, they'd be like, "Man, that's so awesome!" Like, the attaboys, like, "Can't
Of
believe you're like
course.
sleeping with all many girls. Like, this is
Yeah.
like it's crazy." But like, if on the inside, he was like, he felt super empty. Like, it was
Right.
not the lifestyle that he wanted to live. But that story sticks out in particular, just of how extreme and how like escalated it got.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's not super common, but that does happen for people.
Now, did that individual like seek more guidance from you, or did he just do the group and then that was it?
Yeah, he was working with a colleague. So me and like 3 other therapists were running a group. So we all kind of traded off. But then he was working with my friend
Hmm.
who was doing individual therapy with him.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully he's in a better place and
I
not
hope. I know.
up to those old antics. So, what advice would you give to the listeners and viewers out there, like with children? Like for me, for example, I have a 14-year-old going on 15, and I have a 11-year-old that'll be 12
Yeah.
this year. And it's the TikTok world, the social media world. What like me personally, I limit their phone usage, like because you have
Yep.
to.
Good.
You
That's
you
good. Yep.
yeah, you have to. So
Yep.
what advice would you give to the listeners out there not or uncertain of what to do in regards to preventing their children to being exposed to sexual
Yep.
anything?
It's a great question. So, because you're further along. I've got a 6 and a 2-year-old.
Hmm.
So there's a book that I recommend to parents that's phenomenal. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
Right.
And it helps parents know how to have conversations with their kids, because inevitably, like it's a 100% certainty that our kids are going to get exposed to something.
Right.
Again, like I live in Las Vegas. You can't drive around the city without seeing some billboard, or they have these trucks that drive by with these like massive pictures of girls in like
Yep.
bikinis and these like strippers. Like it's everywhere. Like
Hmm.
there's no way to avoid exposure, and you don't have to live in Las Vegas for that either, right? It's like you said, TikTok, social media,
Yep.
Instagram. It's everywhere. So it's not a question of if, it's when they'll be exposed. And so the best possible thing that parents can do is to have lots of conversations with their kids about it. I think the days of like the birds and the bees talk, it's the one time, the big T talk. It's like you're going to sit down and have
Yeah.
this, like for me it was like a sit down talk, it wasn't really that clear. I didn't really know what was going on. It happened literally one time, and my parents never spoke of it again.
Yeah.
Literally never spoke of it again, like anything about that. And so anything that I learned was from other kids, which is not where you want to have our kid. You know, we don't want to have like the playground kids
Yeah.
telling other kids all about that stuff. And so as parents, we have so much of an influence about how our kids how our kids view sexuality. And so if it's some big scary taboo topic that parents aren't talking about, the kids then start to feel awkward and weird about it because the parents do.
Right.
But if the parents are just talking about it, like again, we have a 6-year-old, we're already starting to talk to her about, you know, in kid language. This is why the book is so helpful, because
Mhm.
you want to do it at an age appropriate level. And so for a 6-year-old, we're talking to her about like bodies are important, and there's certain parts of the body that are private,
Right.
and the parts that swimsuits cover are private. And so just kind of laying the groundwork for, if somebody shows you a picture and they're showing a part of the body that's covered by a swimsuit, you're not in trouble. Just come and tell mom and dad, and we'll talk about it. So we're having lots of those conversations, and
Good.
sometimes
That's
we'll
good.
check in, like, have you seen any of these pictures lately? And she'll say no, she hasn't yet. But there will be a day when she says yes. And
Right.
then we're going to talk to her about how to respond, and we're prepping her on what to do when that happens. And so the most important thing that parents can do is to have those conversations and getting those types of resources to know, because parents don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, why my parents never talked about it, because they
Right.
had no idea what to say or do. But now there's so many good resources, that book being one of them, that can help guide parents in knowing how to have those conversations, because they're so important, because we don't want TV or music to educate our kids.
Right.
As you know, we want to be the ones who are the ones who can influence that the most.
I agree. I agree. Because growing up, thinking my mother, I came from a single parent home, and my mother's Filipino, and
Okay.
she didn't. We didn't have that conversation
Welcome to
whatsoever, whatsoever. We and then there was just the general sex ed courses where they show you
right.
the general. This is the male. This is a female, and then this is what happens if so that's.
right.
I think that communication aspect of it is very important with your parents and children.
Especially now, because again, the
Yeah.
stuff that's available now is like, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on the newsletter. There's an organization. So there's a couple of organizations. One's called Operation Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movement created by this I think he's either FBI or CIA,
Mm-hmm.
but he was on this team helping people with human trafficking, so children
Okay.
in sexual slavery.
Yeah.
And so he ultimately ends up quitting working for the government, and now he has a nonprofit where he goes into other countries. He'll go to like Haiti, or where some recent, like, he'll go to different countries to do these undercover sting operations.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'll present and pose as somebody who wants to buy time with the child, and then he's
Mm.
working with the local government. So they'll go in like, okay, how much? He'll pay him the money. As soon as they pay him, the cops bust in there because he's wired up, right? He's
Right.
like got this. He's got a camera on him. He's got the microphone. The cops are in the front yard waiting for the transaction to happen. So like, he's created this whole organization and movement to help stop and end this sexual slavery for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, through hearing his story and through seeing the work that he's doing, like, there's so much of an influence for good, just like there is evil, right? And so
Right.
there's just a ton of good ways for people to raise awareness, whether it's contributing money, or whether it's raising awareness just by like spreading things on social media. The more awareness that we have, the easier it is to tackle this, because again, it's such a big problem that most people are unaware of, right?
Yeah.
Since it's not in our face, we're just like, okay, yeah, I'm sure this happens somewhere, but like, to see the extent of it. So anyways, the reason why I brought up that guy's story, I'm on his email thread, and he talked about how very, very quickly, he said there was a friend of his that had got his mom's cell phone. He was just kind of swiping around, going on internet. Like, within like 3 minutes, he was on this hardcore pornographic site.
Wow.
And the kid's like super young. He's like a 10-year-old kid. But just by accessing his mom's phone a couple clicks away, you have access to so much stuff that
Man.
kids, again,
Yeah.
are just not ready for. So I think having those conversations and prepping them for when that happens it's like there's no other way to do it.
Agreed. Wow. Well, Sam, my questions kind of blew by. We kind of blew through the topics. I'm kind of, I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about. I
Great.
appreciate your time. Where can
You're welcome.
anyone find you for more guidance, or if they're battling the addiction themselves?
Yeah, good question. So I've got a website with a bunch of free resources on there. I've got my podcast. I've got a course for couples. I've got some tools for the guys who are struggling or girls. But the website's coupleshealing.org. And so you can just hop on there and you've got access to all that stuff. And if you're interested, you can take a look around and listen to the podcast and get some help. But it's a pleasure to be on here. I really appreciate
Yeah,
this. It's awesome to be here
pleasure's all
and talk to you
mine.
about this. Yeah,
Pleasure's all
a
mine.
great
I,
question.
I appreciate everything you do. Just the information is just so enlightening, and it helps. Like I said, it helped. Like me and my wife were fine. Everything's good,
Sure.
but
Yep.
just even the listening to your podcast, just the information you put out, you can always add that to your toolbox and do something and just make things even better.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you. No, again,
yeah.
it's a pleasure to be here. It's I always love talking about this and giving tools to help people. So thank you for having me.
Of course, pleasure's all mine. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called Couples Healing from Pornography Addiction.
There it is. Couples healing from pornography addiction
Yep.
with Mr. Sam Tielemans.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Sam, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. I appreciate everything you do, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
All
Appreciate it.
right. Thank you, Sam. And there you have it, folks. That was my episode with Mr. Sam Tielemans. We went over pornographic addiction and couples healing. You know, Sam, very, very bright man. We learned a lot from him. It was, it's just an interesting field of work, like a field or area of expertise. Not many people, if any other people, I have never heard of anybody specializing in pornographic addiction. So that's why we had to get Sam on here. Sam, thank you for taking the time out to come on the show and, just go over the field and what you and your team are doing to help people, get over or overcome, the troubles they have in regards to addiction. Addiction is a serious thing, a serious mental issue. And, more people out there who can help others overcome those issues, it's great regardless of what the addiction is. So, Sam went over, the aspects and the roots and some of the triggers. So I hope you all listening out there enjoyed the episode. If you want, I highly suggest listening to Sam's podcast, which is titled Couples Healing from Porn Addiction. I listen to it on a regular basis. Every time he drops a new episode, I listen to it because it doesn't just cover pornographic addiction. It covers couples and like how to prevent stuff and how do you make yourself better. For example, there's episodes in regards to self-worth, and how you can, if for those of you out there not really strong on self-worth or whatever the case may be, there's an episode that he covers self-worth and how you can start working towards bettering your self-worth and have a better understanding of it. There's episodes regarding couples and just how you can prevent an argument, how to better understand your partner if your partner's doing this, if you're feeling shame about a certain thing. I highly suggest listening to Sam's podcast. It's very enlightening. Great tips for you to apply to your everyday life. And like I said, it's not just specifically about pornographic addiction. It's just everyday tips to help you as a person, individual, help you in your relationships, etc., etc. So make sure you check out the podcast, Couples Healing from Porn Addiction. If you want to follow Sam on Instagram, you can follow him at Healing Couples Solutions. And then if you are in if you're in the greater Las Vegas area, you can be seen by him and his team by checking them out on the website. Their website is coupleshealing.org. And even if you're not in the greater Los Angeles area, go to coupleshealing.org. There's a lot of initial baseline tips on there that he gives out, and then to help help you out in regards to whatever you're dealing with. And then if you want more in-depth help, then you can contact Sam and his team, who are based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So those out there in Las Vegas seeking some help in regards to pornographic addiction or couples healing in regards to the trauma that stems from some sort of addiction or whatever the case may be, reach out to Sam Tielemans and his team out there in Las Vegas. But for those of you tuning in right now, I hope you all enjoyed the show. I appreciate you for taking the time out and listening to it. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Lover's Day, Lover's Season, whatever the case may be. But remember what I said, man, is you don't need to emphasize your love and passion for your significant other or your partner just because it's this time of the year. Do it on an everyday basis, show them how much you love that person, or show how much love you have for that person, because our time here isn't everlasting. It's not here. We're not going to be here forever. So you never know what can happen. So enjoy that person in that moment, as well as yourself. Enjoy yourself. You are you. People love you regardless if you realize, and regardless if you don't think people love you, there are people out there who love you. And if you weren't around or whatever the case may be, a lot of people would be hurt. So self-worth is a big thing. Make sure you love yourself, learn to love yourself. And if you don't know how to, reach out, get the help to do so. Everybody's wonderful. Everybody's extraordinary. It's just, you got to find it within yourself. You got to see it within yourself. But enough of that. Thank you again for listening to the episode. This is homie West Coast Rob signing out. Episode 25 down. I was going to do I'm not even going to say it because I didn't do it. And then people are going to be like, man, why didn't you do it? But anyways, maybe on episode 50, I'm going to do a giveaway or something like that. But anyways, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow Sam at all the aforementioned links that I dropped. If you haven't already, go to Instagram and follow the podcast at YeahDat Podcast, one word. You can follow me on Twitter at westcoast_Rob, and then go to YouTube and subscribe, youtube.com/westcoastrob, and you'll see the video footage of the episodes as they are uploaded. There's vlogs on there and stuff too. But I appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Tell your friends about the podcast. Spread the word. And thank you again. But signing out now. Love y'all. Appreciate you so much. It's homie West Coast Rob signing out. Thank you for listening. YeahDat.